Hi folks, this is your MWIS Fleeting View in association with Petzl. We've got high pressure in the outlook and that brings plenty of dry and fine weather over the next week to 10 days. Generally chilly with east to southeasterly winds prevailing. That will bring some occasional snow flurries locally, mainly England and Wales. Although much terrain is going to be frozen across the mountains, there won't be a great deal to add to any snow cover at this time. There are some snow and hail showers coming in from the west through late Tuesday and onwards into early Wednesday, giving a fresh accumulation, a covering across higher mountains, particularly in more western regions. But following the thawing that we had early this week, there's not too much of old snow across the mountains, some pockets over higher terrain though still around. And where there has been that thawing and refreezing, there are some icy conditions to be aware of, and that will be similar over the high tops in England and Wales as well. High pressure is toward the south, and that is expanding its way northwards with time this week. Still a windy day, though, across the Highlands, strongest across northern areas, up to gale force on higher tops, so do be prepared for significant wind chill. Some sunshine breaking through at times, best of that toward the east, and more widely over England and Wales as the day goes on. The freezing level on Wednesday will be around 700 to 800 metres, just rising a little bit during the daytime and near to western coasts getting up above 900 to 1,000 metres or so. Onwards into Thursday, as higher pressure just expands northwards, we'll find some local inversion conditions in place where higher slopes are a degree or so above freezing point. Some slopes on windward facing areas toward the south will hold nearer to freezing. There'll be some frost too in the valleys and the glens in the morning, and that will be a repeated performance onwards into Friday morning as well, whilst again some higher slopes, particularly in northern Scotland, will be a few degrees above freezing. Gets a little bit more straightforward onwards into the weekend, where broadly the mountain terrain is going to be extensively frozen. Frost from lower slopes upwards in most places, and during the daytime that freezing level at around 400 to 600 metres or so. But even lower down, out of sunlight, frost will stay in the ground, and that will continue onwards throughout the weekend and into the start of next week. A few pockets near to western coasts may just see again values rise near or just above freezing, even on some higher slopes. The ongoing weather story is pretty quiet as high pressure is on the scene, and that builds across England and Wales through into Thursday, becoming centred eventually towards Scandinavia, that high with time. Thursday brings a fine day with lots of sunshine for many, some local fog banks in lower elevations over northern England and central Scotland. A few bits of patchy cloud may drift onto some slopes, but most mountains are going to be clear. Some rather gusty winds up the west coast and across some higher tops even further inland across the Highlands. Strongest speeds around Skye could well be gusting over 40 miles per hour along those western coastal mountains, so just be prepared for that and the significant chill factor. Lighter winds through central southeast Scotland into northern England, and a bit gusty though again across Wales with a southeasterly. That east by southeasterly wind will be a theme here onwards into Friday, and that may just bring more in the way of cloud drifting onto the Pennines and eastern hills in Wales, perhaps even thick enough for a few snow flurries just developing in places, but amounting to very little, and it's a broadly dry story. Best of sunshine in England and Wales will be out toward the west, sunnier generally across a good part of Scotland. Once more, a few patches of fog and maybe a few low-level cloud banks just drifting onto a few slopes, but again, it's generally a fine day. Some gusty winds, once more, could just be around in places over the Highlands, but typically lighter than on Thursday up the west coast. As we take things on into the weekend, we can see that high pressure is just further away over Scandinavia, and we're in between patterns really. We're still under broadly high pressure, but maybe just a bit more in the way of cloud or fog banks maybe around in places. Just watch for local variations. The wind typically light, generally a southerly component across the Highlands, which once more could be quite gusty, and we're just watching the progress of a front out over the Atlantic, which shows some signs of trying to push in, although I suspect it does stay out largely further over the Atlantic. Could just bring a few snow flurries locally to some west coastal mountains, the risk of that here, but I think for most it's a dry story into the weekend. Most likely then we keep high pressure on the scene and any fronts will weaken through Saturday into Sunday, and we keep quiet conditions with some low-level fog and patchy cloud in places, but overall a good deal of sunshine and for many light winds. But once more, just watch for some gusty southeasterlies, particularly Wales and perhaps up the west coast of Scotland once more. Looking at the big picture onwards into next week, and high pressure will be centred most likely around Scandinavia, a strong blocking feature to any weather patterns trying to approach from the Atlantic. East by southeasterly winds prevailing. Could just be some small-scale weather features trying to run into the mix over England and particularly Wales, which could bring some snow flurries perhaps more widely for a time over the hills here, so one to watch in these parts. And generally more in the way of cloud across more eastern hills, and maybe feeding into central southeast Scotland as well. Sunniest conditions all the while will be towards more west and particularly northwestern parts of the Highlands, perhaps extensively sunny over a good number of days forwards in these areas. Occasional snow flurries, possibly drifting a bit further northwards into some eastern parts of Scotland, typically not expected to amount to a great deal. Those winds rather chilly if we do just see that southeasterly prevailing quite widely, and temperatures staying most likely below freezing across the mountains from mid-elevations upwards, and where sheltered overnight, frost in the valleys and the glens will be widespread. That high does seem to be a theme right the way to the end of the week, so not really too much changing in that outlook. The potential for just some lowering of pressure from the Atlantic and maybe Biscay toward the end of the week, but that is uncertain at this distance. As always, you can keep up to date with your local information for 3 days ahead on our website. That is your Fleeting View in association with Petzl. Thanks for watching.